All right, my preps. This is Hakim, your Survive University Dean, back with another one. And so today we are talking about some really interesting news that just came out of New York, where the mayor was talking about this greenhouse gas initiative that they have going on, where he was saying the third largest producer of gases is in this kind of footprint when it comes down to this carbon footprint is going to be, you guessed it, beef, right? And eating meat specifically. So now what he's trying to do, and they are trying to really institute a ban on the amount of meat people can eat in the state, right? And so that's really mind-blowing to me, that people are in the government are now moving towards telling you, hey, you can't eat this and you can't eat that. Now, in full disclosure, I was a vegan, and I also was a vegetarian for a while. And I'm not really necessarily opposed to the idea of eating less meat and increasing the amount of vegetables and things that you eat. However, forcing people to do that when there are some really other heavy major issues on the table, when it comes down to, well, they said it's healthier for you. So I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But why isn't the hospital kind of taking lead in that, when you have hospitals giving out, meat and other processed foods to people who are sick? And we already know that those things tax the system and make it harder for us to heal properly, especially if it's not clean or grass-fed or something of that nature, or wild-caught, meat and fish and things of that nature. So you have to be really careful with that. But then we're not banning pharmaceutical companies, and we aren't putting bans on sugar, and all of these things have been known to increase the level of mortality and disease in our society. So we're not doing it with those things that have been known very clearly to be really, really bad and highly addictive. Same thing with salt, right? But we don't see any bans happening with that. But we see bans with this thing when it comes down to meat. And so when you start thinking about the lines and how they cross and where things come into play, it also is kind of suspicious when you think about a lot of billionaires out there are investing in farmland. A lot of billionaires, I'm not going to say their name. If you follow me, you probably already know some of these folks. A lot of billionaires are investing in, these lab-grown meats. A lot of billionaires are investing in these Beyond Beef and Impossible Meat. And I mean, I love me an Impossible Burger. But one of the things I always question is, how do they make this thing taste so much like meat? What type of chemicals are they putting in this thing to make it taste like, real beef? And so those are some of the things that go through my mind. So I'm sure they go through other people's minds as well. And then, so going back to this idea of these billionaires and these people investing in this stuff, and that stuff being pushed as the alternative, when this other thing going down, it just looks like there's some insider information going on here. Okay, let's have investments in farmland, investments in, in how we're going to grow all of the food. When we take this meat out of the equation, more people are going to have to flock to this. And so I think this might be even like a proving ground. Again, I'm not against eating a healthier diet or eating a diet with less meat. It's interesting that we have a fad now coming out where it's like meat. No, if you just track our history, we go through all of these different diets, from putting tapeworms in our body to now, we are eating just eggs, to then we're moving on to all these different things. So diets and how they move about is one thing, but then also what's good for you and what's not. Now, there's also that personal feeling when you're eating something and you see a result in your system that is that's good. The question is it good now, for now, or is this good for a long period of time? And do you have the evidence to back that up? And so you have to start looking at that, because sometimes the evidence out there in the world can be skewed with people lobbying, with people pushing different agendas. So as a PSYOP guy, I know that well. And so we have to be careful with that. But just staying on this topic, we have a government, or our government, who is pushing for there to be a ban in a certain area on a certain type of food. And that is mind-blowing to me. So it's something that I would caution you on, because again, control is control. And one of the ways people who, if we just take this down to an individual level, people who are abusive, they start doing things to see if they can gain control. And when you give up a certain control, then they move to a new level. And then they try to get control in that realm. And if you give up that control, then they move to a new level, and a new level, and a new level. And so that's how an abusive relationship works. So again, maybe I'm just reading into this, but I would say like this abuse of power, where it's like, okay, you can't eat this. Okay, you can't go here. Okay, you can't do this, and you can't do that. There's always been a little bit of stuff like that in our country. Of course, we have rules, we have taxes, we have things we can and cannot do. But these basic freedoms that we've had to be able to kind of eat what we want, and to move and go where we want to go, now all of that seems to be getting restricted, and it's starting to move to something else. And then there are all these different layers being put into place to kind of make it okay. And that's where this gets really hairy. And I could do another video on this, on the psychological aspect from a PSYOP standpoint, where, you take this idea and you say, well, we know that if we just come out and outright say we're just banning meat, you can't do it anymore, that you're going to have a storm on your hands. But if we can split the mind of the people and have one group of people saying, well, yeah, I'm a vegetarian anyway, I went that way for health reasons and I believe in it, or I'm a vegan and I believe in not hurting animals, or I'm plant-based, so I believe in eating a lot healthier, less meat, not putting meat in your body. So you're already in that mindset. And then you have another person who's like, well, I eat meat occasionally, I'm not against it, for people if that's what they want to do. And then now you create this thing where it's like, oh, this is going to be healthier for the people. It's bad for us to be doing this. It also is harmful for the environment. Now you start making it okay for you as an organization, a government, to come in and do this and have certain groups of people on your side. And then that creates a divide where you have people who are good on both sides now fighting each other, because these people over here are saying, well, this is okay because meat is bad. And these people over here are saying, well, I don't eat a lot of meat, but I don't want anybody to dictate what I eat and what I don't. So now the people are fighting each other over, should we do it and should we not do it? And then the people at the top, the government and the billionaires, are just sitting there just, doing what they do, watching us fight. And because we're fighting each other, we can't turn around and stand our ground and say, hey, you know what? It didn't hurt anybody that I could eat meat if I wanted to, and this person could not eat meat if they wanted to. And we weren't at odds with each other. We'd look at each other and say, hey, I don't necessarily agree with that. But now we've created a dynamic where you're going to see some heavy debates and arguments over this that come out in the near future. So I'm really, really interested in seeing how this is going to play out, because once we do it in one place, I guarantee you we're going to start seeing it pop up. I would also like to invite you to look at the history of plant-based and now this kind of artificial meat. And then one of the main tactics, if you think about it from a military standpoint, a strategic standpoint, is you control the base things that people need on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So for instance, we're looking at controlling water. We're looking at controlling food, right? Those two main things. We're looking at controlling shelter. If we start looking at this, we say, well, there's some places where private organizations like California own all the water rights, right? And then you look at some places where, and so just going back to that, if they own the water rights, they can say what you can and can't do. Like, we can't catch water, and then they come up with reasons why you can't do that, and you can't have certain rights to wells if you drill them out in the cut because we say so. Then you say, okay, well, we talked about shelter. Well, what's happening now? You have these corporations buying up all of these houses. At one point, I think it was like 800 houses a month certain corporations was buying up and building and all of this stuff, and then raising the cost of living and putting people in a really hard predicament where they don't have a choice. They're going to raise their rent 40% overnight, and they're just going to have to go with it. And I think that's pretty scary stuff. Then you have now, how do we control the food? So if all these private organizations and billionaires are out there buying up all the farmland, then they dictate who they want to sell to. This is how we want to sell. They dictate how the food is taken care of on that property. Of course, there are certain laws that say you can't spray this or you can't spray that. But for the most part, these guys are wealthy billionaires, and they're going to be taking control of it. And then you have, okay, well, what are the laws for meat that we make in a lab, that we grow in a lab? Do we even have any rules for that yet? What can we put in it? What can't we put in it? What is harmful to the average human being over a long period of time? Because some of these things we may not realize until we get down the road and we see, oh, this thing keeps happening to human beings. Okay, why is this happening? And some scientist somewhere connects it to a genetically engineered or modified or lab grown meat that we didn't realize was going to have that effect. But whoever's making that, if they become the sole or only a small conglomerate of groups making that, then they can shut that off anytime. So all of these aspects are aspects of control that we don't see on a small scale. If we have like small privately owned farms, right? And we have lots of them. So it's not a big billionaire that owns it, but it's a family organization that has done this for a long period of time, and we've had hundreds of those around the United States. Then that's decentralized per se, versus a centralized, I'm just one billionaire and I own all of the farms. That means that really I can make way more decisions on how this is going to impact my country than these 100 separated families who maybe one is bad over here, but the rest of them are doing what they need to, or maybe 10% is bad and the rest are doing what they need to. We don't have that sort of decentralization anymore. It's all centralized. And when things start getting centralized, we start seeing certain power moves and power plays that take place. Again, you could call this conspiracy or things of that nature, but really this is happening. Like, I'm not making this up. You can go out there and look at it and read it and follow all of the different steps of these billionaires owning this land and all of this lab-grown meat. Some of it is even, I chronicle a lot of it on my TikTok channel. So you can look at that as well. So now let's start being more aware as people. What's happening with this kind of green initiative where they're saying that we're trying to lower the carbon footprint? What exactly does that mean for you? Do you really understand what that means? And again, I'm not saying like go out there and you know, destroy like your local municipality or something crazy. I'm just saying pay attention, because these things are happening, and look at how other things happen and how you tie them to that. Like I said, the psychology of an abuser, right? And how that person starts in one small thing and it grows and it grows and it grows. And then see how that plays out on the world stage, as we are getting so many examples of that right now. So that's where I'm going to leave this today. So again, my friends, this is Hakim, your Survive University Dean, and I want you to share and subscribe this, because staying informed is one of the ways that we start to be ready, and then that way we can stay ready. All right, so until next time, I'm out.